So at work, I already use LaunchDarkly to safely and gradually roll out new features to users, but it occurred to me that I could also use LaunchDarkly's multivariate feature flags to safely roll out batch operations like database migrations. The concern that I have with batch operations is that I often deploy code that underutilizes the database because I'm afraid that I'll deploy code and then accidentally take down the database. But I can use LaunchDarkly multivariate flags to actually change the runtime behavior of a batch operation like a database migration such that I can gradually increase the load on the database safely in a way that I can pull back that demand if the database begins to struggle. So let's take a quick look at how I'm doing this in this little node demo. So I have LaunchDarkly, I'm creating my client, and then I'm creating this task runner, and I'm passing in LaunchDarkly client. And here's my task runner, and you can see it takes the LaunchDarkly client, and it has a asynchronous method run. And inside of run, we're going to mock out the concept of pulling records out of a database, batch processing them, and then writing them back to the database. So what we're going to do is continue to loop while we still have records to process. We're going to check the batch size here, then we're going to go get that batch of records from the database. If we have no records left, we'll exit out. Otherwise, we'll pass that batch over to this process batch method. Now, again, most of this is just mocked out. It's not very meaningful in a production sense. What we want to look at is this get batch size method. If we jump down here to get batch size, what we can see is we're using our LaunchDarkly client to check the variation value of this tag, tasks batch size record count. We're going to pass in a unique identifier for this task, which is task runner node demo, and we'll just give it a default value of 100. So this feature flag is going to end up defining the batch size of each one of our batch operations, right? Because again, if we jump back here, we see we get the batch size, then we turn around and we call get next batch and we pass in that batch size. So if we default to 100, that means that our batch operations will start processing 100 records at a time. Now we'll take this batch size record count and we'll go into LaunchDarkly, and you can see I've already set it up here, and you can see that we're targeting our node demo here. Key is one of task runner node demo, and we're going to serve batch size 100. And let's go ahead and just kick that off in our terminal. And you can see here processing records 100. Now, if I jump over here, and let me actually try and get both of these in the same screen. If I now update this to target 500 and I save changes, you'll see that immediately our in-progress batch operation picked up that value and is now processing our database migration in batches of 500 records. Now again, I was alluding to earlier that I tend to underutilize the database because I'm afraid I will launch code that actually takes down the database if my batch operations are too aggressive. Now the beauty of LaunchDarkly multivariate flags is the multivariate value set can be changed at any time. So in fact, right now you can see right now I only have 100 and 500, but I can go in at any time to the variations, and I'll come in and let's move this back into view. I'll come here, I'll add a variation, I'll say 2000, batch size 2000, I process 2000 records at a time. Let's save that. Awesome. Now if we go back to our targeting, and let's again get these in the same window here, so you can see that this is still processing 500 records at a time, but now you'll see that we have the option of 2000 records in our multivariate value set, and if I change this, boom, immediately my in-progress batch operation picked up the new multivariate flag value that I added at runtime and is now applying that to subsequent batch operations. This is really exciting to me because what it means is that I can safely configure runtime behaviors for batch operations like database migrations in such the way that I can squeeze as much performance out of the database throughput, but do it in a way that safely allows me to dial back that overhead, that processing demand, the moment I see the database begin to struggle. Let's say 2,000 records was too much, switch back to 500, boom, immediately my batch operations fall back to using the lower batch size for each subsequent operation, thereby allowing the database a little bit more breathing room. So again, creating batch operations is probably not something you do on a day-to-day basis, but this is a really exciting opportunity for me to be able to safely ramp up and deploy batch operations with peace of mind that I can really push the limit with the opportunity to kind of pull that safety valve and decrease the limit as I see my application begin to struggle. So I can really walk that line, get the batch operations performed safely and with confidence.